If you are among the 200 who are joining us, you are at the A. Richard Newton Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series. It's the first time this semester we are online. It is nice. I would say it's nice to see you, but hopefully we'll see you soon enough. But you can see all of us right now. My name is Victoria Howell. Maybe you didn't get such a close-up of my picture before, but when we were back in the auditorium, but it's nice to see you all. Today, we are thrilled. We have two students who will be introducing our speakers. And in case you feel like you're seeing double, you are seeing double. Our speakers tonight are twins, and Abigail Crisp will tell us a little bit more about them. I am still dinging and we're still getting participants in. So I think we just wait a minute or two, if that's okay. And talk, as I say, talk amongst yourselves. If you all want to use the chat, when I say you all, I mean the entire class, feel free to do that. But when you have questions for our speakers, please put them into the Q&A. I'll also be doing a couple of polls, so we'll be somewhat interactive in class. Looking forward to a great session.
Definitely. Thanks, Victoria.
Professor, I think the chat is disabled from someone who wrote in the Q&A.
That is great to know. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can enable that. There we go. Should be enabled now. Use it wisely, everyone. And we've got about 250 on right now. I'm going to give it another minute or two. Hopefully we'll get a few more.
Amazing.
Artem, I think we're okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought I had selected that everybody can chat.
Hi. Someone said hi. Hi, Kate.
Hey, it would be kind of fun to know where everybody is right now. Let's start with that, and then we'll officially start. Layla and Nika, I'll start with you all. Where are you?
Oh, yeah. Yes, we're in SF right now at our apartment.
Fantastic. Shayla, you're going to go first introducing. Where are you?
I'm currently in my dorm in Blackwell.
Amadena, you're ready to go next, I see.
I'm currently in my apartment. I live pretty close to campus, so.
Nice.
Fantastic. I think you're going to be introducing Nika. Sukriti, our fearless course coordinator, together with Artem, where are you?
I'm on campus at Berkeley in Haas.
Fantastic. Artem, we can't see you, but where are you?
Valley Life Sciences building on campus as well.
Fantastic. Well, then I'm going to turn it over right now to Abigail Crisp, who was our course coordinator last semester, course coordinator fearless, who was so excited to invite our speakers to speak this evening. And not only was she excited and nervous about doing that, she gave me the best notice that you all were able to make it. It was like, they said yes. So with that, Abigail, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then our speakers will be introduced.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Vicky. Well, yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Abby. I'm a junior from New York studying data science and environmental economics. And I was last semester's Newton series course coordinator. And I'm so excited to be here and to talk with Leila and Nika. And so we'll dive in with some introductions. So Shaylee and Almadina are current students of the Newton lecture series. So I'll hand it off to them to introduce our speakers.
Thanks so much, Abby. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shaylee. I'm a current freshman studying EECS. And I have a huge interest in the intersection of entrepreneurship and engineering. So I found it really inspiring and fascinating how Nika and Leila are using fashion and science to tackle the global carbon emission crisis through developing sustainable textiles and commercializing their invention. Their journey from their initial idea to building a multi-million business is one of a kind, and I can't wait to dive into the details soon. Now I'll pass it on to Almudena to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Almudena. I'm an international student from Lima, Peru. I'm currently a sophomore studying economics and data science. And since a young age, I've been interested in the fashion industry, seeking to make it more sustainable and to reduce its carbon emission, as well as advocate for slow fashion and emerging brands.
Perfect. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker here today. Nika is a recent graduate from UC Berkeley, where she earned degrees in materials engineering and business administration. So Nika left her Silicon Valley job as a product engineer to create and lead Rubi Laboratories as its CEO. However, she has been interested in the space of materials and sustainability since a young age, when she started working in different science research labs in the Bay Area. After working for 10 years across different research initiatives in solar energy, wind, and energy storage, she came to UC Berkeley to pursue her degrees, which drew her to her passion to invent and innovate new technologies. Nika envisions building the future of decarbonized supply chains and moving away from past detrimental supply chains to new ones that can be planet positive.
And now let me introduce Layla, who, similar to her sister, had an early start in the space at the young age of 15. In her early days, Layla was focused on the medical bioengineering field, working in cancer and therapeutics. This led her to Johns Hopkins, where she received her BS in computational neuroscience, entrepreneurship and management on the pre-med track in 2017. Currently, she's in her last year at Harvard Medical School. During her time at med school, Layla has been a neurosurgery research intern at Cedars-Sinai and a Stanford Research Fellow. However, soon after completing her education from Harvard, she joined Nika at Rubi Labs, since she felt that it was imperative that she use her education and her potential to give back to society and create a better, more habitable planet for all. Now at Rubi, Layla leads the technological development efforts as the CTO. This means she oversees the development as well as scaling up the technology at Rubi Labs. She played a key role in creating the early prototypes of the technology as well. However, today, one of the key challenges that Layla has to tackle is finding a way to provide textiles for the whole industry in a very rapid timeframe. We're so happy to have you both here today, and we're looking forward to learning more about Rubi Labs, sustainability, and your entrepreneurial career.
Thank you so much. What lovely introductions. And we're so excited to be here too.
Thank you so much, Almudena and Shaylee, for introducing Nika and Leila. That was an awesome introduction and really sums up like how impressive our two speakers are. And I'm really glad to have them here tonight. I guess also just to give a little context about how I found Rubi Labs and Leila and Nika was actually through social media. And I found like all about their entrepreneurial journey on TikTok of all places, and learned how they were making carbon negative cellulosic textiles, which I thought like, wow, these two women are so accomplished and driving impactful, sustainable change through their venture. And I also thought it was inspiring to see like a female-led startup working within like the intersection of biology, fashion, and technology. So I thought they would be a perfect fit for the Newton lecture series, and that they'd bring in an interesting perspective, especially since they graduated like just within like a few years. And I guess like right before we dive into our questions, we'd love to ask you all what you all are studying. And one more question to preface our talk tonight. So yes,
I've gone ahead and launched a poll.
Perfect.
I was trying to vote, but it looks like I can't. I'm curious though.
It's interesting. Even like, I feel like in past semesters, there's always like a wide variety of what people are studying. And I think that's also interesting, like in terms of entrepreneurship, what people are, you know, studying and interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
I will say that everybody's very digitally accomplished. And when I say digitally, I mean their fingers. That was pretty fast for the polls. So I don't know if you all can see the results. We are heavy on both computer science and business. followed by data science, and then biology so far. And I will say that about 80% of the students were participating in the poll, but we just thought it might be kind of interesting for you all to see who's out in the audience, because we can't actually see everybody's faces.
Yeah, this is awesome. Engineering and business, love it. That's what I studied. And everyone else. Welcome.
And I think we have one more poll we wanted to launch about sustainability and fashion.
Exactly. Hold on just one moment and I'll pull that up. We just kind of, since we're talking about fashion and sustainability, which isn't, I would say, not everybody's thing in terms of fashion. Everybody's thing is sustainability. We kind of wanted to know, level set where you all are in kind of knowledge. So let me pull up a poll on fabrics. The question is, what do you think is the most carbon neutral of these 4 options? Wow, you all are really fast. Why are the options so limited? Because I only wrote 4, or unless you're talking about majors, because I only put 10 up. I know you all can deal with that. Layla, Nika, can you actually see the polls as it's going on now, or do I have to? You can't see the results?
We can't see the results yet. I think until you.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of interesting. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I'm going to share those results, and I'm also going to share something on my screen. So according to everybody in the audience, they were thinking that organic cotton is the most carbon neutral, or carbon negative, I guess I should say. And perhaps I've misled in how I asked the question, but are you surprised?
Us.
Right now, I have a screen share up, which should be the kind of the spectrum on the least carbon neutral to the most carbon neutral. I hope that that slide makes sense.
Yeah.
Top right, Rubi Labs.
Yes. Carbon negative is just like the one thing that might make it a little bit easier to place on the scale. But yeah, exactly. And it looks like a lot of people got the, actually had some good poll results.
Yeah. So there you go. We have a decent foundation for knowing what a little bit about carbon negative fabrics. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll definitely be going more into that and giving some more context about that, so people will learn and get educated on that too. But yeah, I wanted to say again, like, I'm so excited that both of you were able to make it, especially because Nika is a Cal grad. So like in the tradition of having Cal grads like talk on our like speaker series, I wanted to ask what dorm you stayed in freshman year.
Yes, I stayed in Unit 1. I was in a triple, and not like a corner triple, just like a middle triple. So it was very small.
It's funny, I feel like Unit 1 and Unit 3 are like the most common ones we hear from entrepreneurs. So I don't know if causation, correlation, what's going on there?
Yeah, something about the co-ed bathrooms, maybe.
I think, yeah, it must be that. But yeah, I would actually love to jump into your college journeys and learn a little bit about your path, like your undergrad. And I know, Layla, you're also continuing education. So yeah, I guess first I'll start with Nika. I was wondering if you could tell us about your time at Berkeley, what your path was like through college. Yeah, like why did you study what you studied? We'll start with that.
Yeah. So I guess I was sort of in a unique situation where I really was already inspired by sustainable materials when I was considering applying to college, and I kind of like knew what my main personal passion and personal mission was. I had been since I was 15 years old working on sustainable materials in different research fields, and it was just always so interesting to me that you could understand the natural world through science and then apply that to new technologies to change the way that we do things. And through actually some of my teachers in high school, I realized that that was really material science, the study of materials and also the engineering of materials and being able to achieve the different properties and outcomes and new things that you wanted to achieve. I was really amazed by how, when you look throughout history, our ages in history and our progress as a society is related to the materials that we've developed, and like the names of the eras are named after materials. And that was just something that really captivated me. Like, materials define our progress, and I wanted to study and learn more and be able to create new types of materials for sustainable applications. So when I came into Berkeley, I was just a materials engineering major. It's a really small major. Maybe if some of you guys are MSCs, shout out in the chat. But at the time, I'm not sure if it's probably still the same way. It was maybe like 30 people. And that was great. I got to get a really MSc gang, nice. Got to get a really intimate sort of knowledge of materials and have some good research opportunities. But I was always interested in bringing these technologies to market. And so I knew I wanted to do business as well. I knew I sort of was like this weird middle schooler, maybe. I knew I wanted to be a CEO one day and start a company. And that theme sort of carried on. So even though I loved engineering and science, I knew I wanted to start businesses with those technologies. So first came in as MSc. I focused in on science research and did some like summer research things at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. I was part of Council, which I thought was literally the coolest thing I did in college, hands down. I think I learned most of my engineering knowledge and management knowledge from Council. So just a little plug.
Just to interrupt, do you want to explain real quick what Council is to anyone in the audience who may not know?
Yeah, so Council is UC Berkeley's solar vehicle team. My God, there's a fight starting in the chat. So we build, design, build, and test solar-powered cars, and these are full-size vehicles. The car that I was driving when I joined Zephyr. Its name is Zephyr. It had a license plate. It's something that is street legal, something that the team develops, which is truly an incredible engineering experience to be able to design and develop something that's so real world applicable. During my time on Council, I was on a bunch of different engineering teams. I got to see across like solar, mechanical, electrical, battery. I was the operations director for a year, and I was also the driver. So sort of got to see all of the aspects of building, leading a team, and applying a technology. So throughout my 4 years, I would say that was a major driver for me, and actually getting to see technology developed and implemented. I would highly, maybe that's one of my takeaways. If you have the opportunity to work on a real world application engineering team or a product or project, it goes so far in terms of teaching you just how to do things and how to overcome challenges and all that. I was part of a few other clubs or things at Berkeley that were really important to my career. One of them was the Berkeley Group, which is a nonprofit consulting team. And through that experience, I got a lot of hands-on business management, management consulting experience. And then also Kairos Society, which I don't think is around anymore, but it was like an entrepreneurship society. And that was just like for meeting like-minded people. But I'd say like the main things that I focused on throughout college was taking meeting my requirements, but just always following my passion in terms of what I wanted to study. There wasn't an MET program at the time. I really pushed for studying both engineering and business. And so when I very thankfully got into Haas and was able to do both, it was something that I had to really fight for, honestly. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know, sometimes at Berkeley, you really have to fight to make things happen. And I think this was one of those cases. So a big theme for me was just always taking the classes and doing the things that I was really interested in and making sure I had the experience that I really wanted to have and the takeaways. So I got to take engineering classes, business, random other classes. I took summer classes so that I'd be able to fit in all the classes that I wanted to take. And so I really just tried to prioritize learning what was interesting to me. And just one of those examples was unrelated to any of my major requirements or anything. I took a synthetic biology class just to learn about it. I was so interested in alternative proteins and things going on in that space. I took this one class, and I think that was so catalytic to starting Rubi. It gave me so much of an outside perspective in a different field of engineering and what was happening in that industry. So definitely would emphasize, following your interests and things like that. Let me think, anything else? So yeah, and I guess the last thing I'll say is I always focused on testing out and trying different ventures. So I started maybe 3 companies when I was at Berkeley. Usually it was just me, solo founder, maybe with one friend. But I was just always so interested in trying to come up with a solution to different problems, testing it out. And this was across different global renewable energy solutions that could help countries with challenges with blackouts, even on the computational side, being able to accelerate the speed of materials development by using ML and AI. Nothing really took off, but it was a great experience to try building products to solve problems and just run through that process. So that was what Berkeley was like to me. It was great. I love my time at Berkeley. Now that I look back on it.
Wow. I mean, it seems like you were so involved, excuse me, all throughout your undergrad, and you did a lot of different things, but I'm glad you talked about what you felt you got out of it, exploring different things, trying entrepreneurship, even just in different ventures by yourself with other people. I think the class you were mentioning, was it a challenge lab? I think it may still be offered if anyone that's interesting to any people in the audience, but
yeah, I did take a challenge lab class. That one was a different one though. Oh, I forgot about challenge lab classes. There's so many great classes to take at Berkeley. I hope everybody's taking advantage
Did
of
you
them.
ever take the Newton series?
And yes, thank you for pointing that out. I did take the Newton series. So just a few years ago, I was in the auditorium listening to some great speakers in this class. So it's really an honor to be back here trying to share some of my learnings with students again. So yeah, I was in the class too. I remember the speakers who came in, the lessons were really impactful for me. And I still remember a lot of the lessons that I learned from some of the speakers who came in. So it's very impactful.
Yeah, I second that as a coordinator. But yeah, wow, that's so interesting to hear how business engineering and entrepreneurship played a role into you finally founding or co-founding Rubi Lab. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. And I would love to ask Layla what your experience was like across the coast at Johns Hopkins and then later at Harvard. So yeah, tell me a bit about that. What was your path like? Yeah, I'll leave it for you.
Yeah, so I'd say on a similar timeline to Nika, we both kind of started out in science research when we were around 15. So I was really interested in understanding biological systems like metabolism and how those things go wrong, and then how like a deep understanding of those systems can help us actually solve problems in disease. And yeah, I think my interest really was sparked by medicine. When we were in high school, one of our cousins actually was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And that was my first time ever coming into contact with the medical field. Like nobody in our family is really in medicine, but the like treatment that he received from this neurosurgeon was so incredible. And just like, it was this like 10-hour surgery of like really like fine detailed operation, removing this really hard to resect tumor. And I just thought it was like the most inspirational thing I'd ever experienced before. So I really wanted to like dedicate my life to medicine at that point. So I decided to start doing research actually with that physician on these anti-cancer drugs that are sort of like nanomedicine, bioengineered drugs. And that was at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. And that was a really great experience to kind of get into a deeper understanding of kind of these different applications of metabolism and understandings of biology and things like that. So then I applied to college and ended up going to Hopkins, where I studied neuroscience and entrepreneurship. And that was a great experience. I think the entire time I was very heads down, like pre-med, really, trying to do as many, extracurriculars as possible and do all the things necessary kind of to get into medical school. And I'd say like, I didn't have a whole lot of time to reflect on what my life's purpose would be, which I'll kind of get into as you can all see that I've kind of changed my path a little bit. But the things that were really great about my kind of time in college was meeting a lot of great mentors who were like, for example, female neurosurgeons or neurosurgeons who were leading their own research labs with just an MD and not necessarily like a PhD, who really like took an interest in mentorship and really supported me in my like research journey. So I found that really helpful in understanding like what my impact could be. And yeah, then I applied to medical school, went to medical school, I'd say like, and at Harvard, I'd say like that was trial by fire, like in every sense of the term. I think like the amount of responsibility given to medical students was way more than I could have possibly imagined. And just the amount of information we learned. And I think my entire college degree was covered in like the first day of class, like all the biology and chemistry and everything together was just like over in one day. And then it was all new stuff from then on. So it was really an amazing experience to learn so much and be surrounded by so many amazing people. And then I think like starting out in the clinical sense, like in the different hospitals doing rotations and everything, that quickly confirmed that I had wanted to do something that I could see had a direct impact on the world. So I really wanted to be in surgery when I was still kind of thinking I wanted to be a doctor. So that kind of reconfirmed that for me. And then I think I'll just get into like a little bit of the reflection, just to save us some time. But I think only after I did my sub-internships, which are kind of like the longer month-long periods where you're acting as a resident in the hospital. So I did a sub-internship in plastic surgery and neurosurgery. I really got a sense of what actually being a doctor is like in terms of like the actual work once the novelty wears off of like seeing the brain for the first time, operating on the meninges for the first time. And I think that was a really important experience for me to see really like what it would be like to be a physician every day, and not necessarily like the amount of work or the difficulty or anything, because I think we're all used to working really hard. And I think that's what kind of makes life meaningful, but it's more like the type of work. So the memorization of mnemonics and frameworks and how to diagnose and treat patience versus like what I felt like I was missing in the creativity of working in a lab or doing research and really feeling like you had more freedom to operate. So that was kind of my reflection that I had in third year of medical school, that I really missed that kind of lab research, creativity and all of that. And sort of in the background of all of this, the background thread is that we're very into climate and nature and all of that. So Ruby is kind of a very logical next step for us, with kind of like our background growing up in the Bay Area, and also growing up in the fashion industry. And I think there may have been a question on Ruby.
Oh, should we answer questions as we go, or actually you let me know, Abby.
I think we can, just to save on time, we can tackle it at the end, but we'll definitely come back to all the questions in the chat. But yeah, that is really interesting to hear about your background in research and how that like influenced what you were interested in, like in medical school, and also figuring out like what exactly kind of gave you your passion and what you really like valued in like a career, and also just like what you wanted to work on. But that was a perfect reflection, because that leads us into our next like section of questions about Rubi Labs and all about your entrepreneurial ventures. So I guess first I would like to ask, why did you decide to tackle decarbonization in the fashion industry? Or like how did the idea come to be when you guys started working together?
Yeah. So I would say it didn't even like start off in fashion. It was really on the concept of climate and thinking about the carbon problem. And this was something that I had been starting to think about in like junior and senior year of college. And then when I went into industry, it was just something I was like mulling on the side always. And as a materials engineer, it was just like such an interesting problem that we have such a massive carbon issue, but so many of our materials are carbon based, and we have great carbon cycles on Earth. And our planet has evolved to be so good with carbon. We love carbon. It does so much for us. It was just sort of like this interesting, just reframing, like, what if we could unlock CO2 as a new natural resource and be able to build a new economy of the materials that are so valuable that we use every day, but made from CO2 instead, to basically rebalance the carbon cycle. And so that was an idea that I just started exploring. And Ruby started out, honestly, like it was just me, and it was like a concept I was working on the side of work and things like that. And I think the thing that sort of made it clear that fashion was a great initial market and a really important area to apply the technology was, one, fashion is the third most CO2 polluting supply chain on the planet, and it doesn't get the attention it needs for the amount of pollution that it produces. And I think that's from a lot of bias probably in the science and engineering field. But that's a really inspiring, impactful problem that if you can solve, you can have a really global impact. And then at the same time, textiles and the materials that we use for fashion are a lot of them are natural and carbon molecules. They're polymers, they're cellulose, whether it's cotton or viscose or lyocell, or they're polyester and plastics, and also carbon molecules. So it was something that we grew up in fashion. We had a really deep understanding of how the industry worked, and it was sort of like a click moment for me. I was thinking about like, how can we use CO2 and make materials with it? And then here's a clear industry that is in deep need of more sustainable supply chains, that has this massive pollution problem and is also trying to find a solution. I think if you look at the industries, just all of the industries over the last 5 years, and see which ones have really tried to move on sustainability and actually implemented things, I really strongly believe fashion is one of the first and largest movers, even though that meant greenwashing. And I think that that's like an unwanted outcome, but it still signifies the movement that was trying to happen, but there were no solutions. And that's a great signal. It's like they tried to solve their problem, they couldn't. It created a whole greenwashing issue, and they still need something that doesn't exist. So that was sort of the framing that went into Rubi. In terms of developing the technology, I was inspired by one of my professors at Berkeley, my polymers professor, Professor Shu, and she had recently done some research on enzymes embedded in materials to be able to be functional materials. And I think the research that she had just published was basically having this polymer material have enzymes that break down neurotoxins, so that you could like put this material in water and it would like clean the water and take out all the neurotoxins and stuff like that. And it was the first time I had started thinking about enzymes as sort of like what they could do in terms of processing and production, and sort of just outside of a cell context. And I think that was a big moment, like, oh, wow, like we can use enzymes, which are so powerful. I don't know if anyone, like, I'm sure there's people here who love enzymes as much as we do, but they're just so specific and energy efficient and really great. And like the fact that we could maybe use them in outside of like a cell, outside of a natural environment to run processes was so cool. And so we started focusing in on this problem, like, okay, photosynthesis, great example, CO2 to X in plants run by enzymes. Okay, how could we run this process in outside of the cell in an industrial system using enzymes that can operate in non-natural conditions? We developed the technology like through a lot of research, literature research. Eventually, I sort of like got Layla on board, and one summer we prototyped this in a public biohacking lab in South Bay. But it was sort of like us, like kind of like I would ask Layla things about like biology, and we would sort of like build up the tech, and then eventually we kind of just started working on it together. But we developed the tech. We sort of had this hypothesis of, okay, this stabilized enzyme system could work. We prototyped it in a biohacking lab in South Bay, just went for it. I was still in my full-time job. Layla, it was like summer for her for med school. So I would take my meetings, and this was like during COVID, it was last year, 2021. I would like take my meetings in the lab, and then we'd get back to testing. And anyway, we proved that it worked. It was successful, CO2 to cellulose. And that was a big like milestone on it. And it sort of just happened too. It was like, oh my gosh, this really worked. Like we made cellulose. Nice. We're scientists.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like so innovative to use enzymes to like take carbon out of the air and make that into something that is actually useful and something that, you know, millions of people can use. Like, and so like at that point, when you have your successful prototype, now are you like, okay, how do we like protect the intellectual property of like this technology? So what was that like? Or I guess like, can you describe the process of like, you know, protecting that intellectual property, getting a patent?
Yeah, and definitely one of the initial sparks was one of our uncles is a chemical engineer. And I guess we were just like talking about it with him, like what we were working on. And he was like, oh my gosh, you guys need to protect this innovation and figure out how to file a patent. And we had no idea how to do that. And he's like, oh, like you can just try and like figure out how to file one yourself and just like file it. Like, okay. And later I learned like, yeah, that's kind of true. For your first provisional patent, which is sort of like the first draft that you submit, it's something that you can actually like kind of write yourself. it's better if like an actual lawyer or someone writes it, so it's a little bit more defensible. But if you want to patent something, you can kind of just like follow the patterns of what a patent looks like. You can Google a patent and just sort of like write it for yours. So that's what I did. I basically like wrote a really long document and like drew all the figures and covered everything that I sort of envisioned for what this technology could be.
And this was before we prototyped it.
Yeah,
I think. This was in
actually,
2020.
This was in 2020. So it was more when we had the concept and kind of like what the technology would look like. And I wanted to start working with people, like maybe bringing on interns or something where we could prototype it out. And that was, yeah, good memory. That was what our uncle was like, oh, you can't like hire anyone or bring anyone in on the tech without protecting your innovation. So made sure to do that. I wrote it myself, filed it just through Google.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so now you have your patent technology. And when I guess you were first starting out, now like Layla, you're the CTO, Nika, you're the CEO. How did the separation of roles come into play and like dividing up responsibilities? And especially, I guess, like follow-up question, like, what is that? Like, how does that work as sisters? But first off, I'll let you describe that.
Yeah, I think it was a really like obvious decision for us. I think Nika has always had this really strong passion for entrepreneurship and business. She went to Haas and has always wanted to be like CEO of a company, start her own company and all of that. And I feel like my dreams changed somewhere in my life that this kind of started making more sense for me to be like a CTO and be on the innovating side of a technology company. So it kind of made the most sense because my background is in bioengineering and would really be very applicable to the day-to-day building the technology of our synthetic biology platform and stabilizing enzymes, choosing enzymes, all of that stuff. So it worked out really nicely. We could have never like even designed for this.
Great combination of skills. And we make sure that, like, for me, I still want to be close to the technology. I am an engineer at heart and all of that. So we still like work closely together, and the whole company is based on technology. So it's like you can't really escape technology in our company. But Layla is leading our whole technical roadmap and technical team and everything around developing the technology. And I work on the business side, but I still get to do the technical work too, which is nice. It's good to get both by being in a more business role, I guess, CEO, but at a technical startup.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like because you now have like two roles that like complement like each of your experiences, and you're also working as sisters, and you deal with like conflicts like just as a general company does, especially like budding entrepreneurs deal with. So how do you deal with that like constructively when when conflicts arise inevitably?
Yeah, actually, that just made me remember that one of the things that has always stuck with me is something I learned in the Newton series. A founder came in and I forget her name, but she started in De Niro, maybe Victoria.
Oh.
But I forget, but she really emphasized in her talk that working with a co-founder is almost like Jessica Ma, exactly, is almost like a marriage or like a relationship. And like, okay, yes, we're sisters. I don't mean like that, but like she went to marriage counseling with her co-founder to be able to like work through challenges that they were facing, to be able to improve their communication and get to a state where they could like really effectively work together. That's always stuck with me, actually. So when we started working together, as sisters, like you never really build the like collaboration level communication, like work level communication needed. So when we started off, it was definitely very new. We knew had like the twin bond. We knew what each other was thinking, but in terms of like communicating different perspectives or what we each like thought roadmaps should look like, or especially when they conflicted, that was something completely new that we had to learn how to do. Of course, we had some like twin fights, but it really comes down to communication. So we sort of had to switch gears during those situations and think about it more of like an actual objective, like working with a colleague sort of thing, and laying out like frameworks and sort of like how we collaborate and how we like to work with people. So it was kind of like we needed to leverage all the strengths of being sisters that I think is really unique and gives us a lot of superpowers, I guess, in starting the company together. But then also sometimes switch gears and make sure that we're still collaborating as colleagues.
Yeah, of course. It's also, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have siblings, so like trying to imagine working together on a venture is like could be kind of daunting, but it's interesting to hear how you guys have handled it and collaborated regardless of or despite having already been sisters. But yeah, it's really interesting to hear.
The good part is that it's also so easy to like come back to normal after arguing. Like I'm sure with, you know, all of your sibling relationships, like you argue a lot, but then kind of like have an unspoken, like you forgive each other and it's fine. So that's also been really helpful to just move on. So yeah.
I'll ask one last question regarding Ruby Labs, and then maybe we can talk about some takeaways for entrepreneurs. But I wanted to touch on this because you all recently raised a 4.5 million seed round. Congratulations on that, by the way. And also by like renowned VCs like Talos Capital, Necessary Ventures, Plug and Play. So I definitely want to ask, like, what was that like pitching, like leveraging your network and, you know, trying to overcome like that barrier of getting capital?
Yeah, definitely. So this was end of last year. We had just proven the prototype worked. We didn't have funding yet. It was something we were completely funding from like my full-time job. So I left my job. Layla like also came in full-time, and we decided to start like going all in on a fundraise and making it happen. I think it was entirely like a learning process. It's not something that we went into really knowing too much about. I mean, I had done a lot of like entrepreneurship stuff at Berkeley, but I think in terms of like actually fundraising and doing the process, it's there's just like so many nuances and things to know and figure out that you kind of just need to like do it and like learn as you go and have references where you can get help when you need it. So one, I think the network from Berkeley was incredible. That was such a great initial like stepping stone from my club that I was in, Kairos, and then other entrepreneurship things, and friends from Haas who had gone on to VC, had connections in different firms. That was such an amazing initial starting point that I don't think most people have. So if anyone's wanting to leverage that,
it's truly like something that you couldn't find like at any other, maybe like also Stanford, I don't know, but being in the Bay Area, you guys are so like lucky to build this kind of network of entrepreneurial resources. And I think especially like people you trust that you can ask questions like, how do I value my company? How much should I ask for? All of those kind of more specific questions, I think were really helpful to ask Nika's friends when we were first starting.
Yeah, so it was definitely a lot of trial and error, learning, asking for references. But I mean, what it looked like is just, okay, thinking about what we want to do, what our milestones are over the next like 2 years, like who we want to hire, what we want to build, how much will that cost? Using that as an initial starting point for how much we want to raise. And we initially really underestimated the amount of money that we'd need. We were like, oh, like we can like raise under $1 million for building this like biotech company for like 2
Never
years
have
of
to-
runway. and
never have to raise
never
again.
have to raise again. Unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. So yeah, we ended up raising about 4.5 million. But it did start with just trying to assess how much money we think we would need, mapping out the investors we wanted to talk to, creating a pitch deck. I think there's some great classes, I think, yeah, at Berkeley that cover like some basics of pitch decks. And yeah, I could share a few slides, maybe if anyone has questions. Doing that, and then pitching hundreds of VCs and just like being okay, trying to get through the rejection. And it's really hard. Fundraising is tough, but it really is something you need to emphasize your passion, your experience, what you're trying to build. And your first round is all about like getting the investor to believe in you and the team, and like what you're trying to do. So it's really not something that you probably won't have a lot of hard things to present or progress or anything. So it's really about being that inspiration that's going to convince someone that, you know, they're going to succeed. And that was something we had to like learn over time. I would definitely recommend having friends, or just I would recommend talking to other founders who have recently raised, any VCs or people you know in your network close to that space, who can just help with those questions, like valuing your company, how much you're raising, what kind of financial instruments to use. It's tough. There's like a lot that goes into a fundraise. So getting as much help as possible, and just knowing that everyone is figuring it out for the first time for their first fundraise. No one knows how to fundraise. Not even VCs know how to fundraise. Like, it's crazy. Even VCs are like pretending that they like know all the things about fundraising, but everyone's just making up things as they go.
I'm glad we can hear the truth from you too.
Like, everyone has different definitions for what a seed and a pre-seed and a Series A and all these things are. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I don't know if those terms are common. And then like people just do it anyway. It's just like whatever you can make happen, whatever you can figure out. It's like a free for all. Like, just try and get the best thing for you and your company. Yeah, it's possible. That was all over the place, but fundraising is really like that. Like, try and learn what you can from people who've done it before, and then just try and fight for what you want. I'm sure Berkeley taught everyone well for doing that.
Well, yeah, thank you. No, thank you so much for that answer. I'd rather, it's better to like know what to expect than like sugarcoat it and like not really know what you're going into. But I think now we'll probably transition into like some Q&A.
Awesome.
Does that sound good, Vicky?
Yeah, it sounds great. We've been lining up some students who are eager to ask questions. So hope that's all right. And then this has been fantastic. But I'm going to put you on the spot, and literally on the spotlight, and just have you ask your question.
Okay. Hi, Layla and Nika. First of all, thank you so much for coming to speak to us. You two are some of the most accomplished people I've probably ever met. So for my question, I was wondering, like, when you were in college and you were graduating, did you ever feel any pressure from family or friends, to work a traditional 9-to-5 instead of like starting your own venture? And also going along with that, knowing that you're now responsible for your own venture, like, how do you deal with like stress or any other feelings of anxiety because you're like responsible for the outcomes of this business?
Yeah, what a great question. And I think that was a really real thing for both of us. Definitely, even when I was graduating from Berkeley before I went into industry, I was considering like, should I just move forward and try and start a company at this stage? And I definitely felt the pressure of I need like a stable job. And I didn't even like pursue a master's or higher education because it really felt like I had that pressure from my family to like be able to be self-sustaining at that point. And then when I had a full-time job and was working and in tech, had the nice salary that comes with tech and all of that, convincing my parents and sort of like my family that, we're just going to leave that and just go and build some random thing that no one understands what we're doing. It was definitely hard. My parents kept being really worried. And I get it. Like, we come from a family of immigrants. They lost everything in a revolution and came over here and rebuilt. So for us to like throw away stability, it's like not easy to wrap your head around, I guess. But what ended up happening was, after a lot of conversations with my parents and family, with emphasis on, this is really risky. Are you sure you want to do this? I sort of just like laid down exactly the metrics. I was like, okay, if we can prove that the tech works, that there's investor interest and customer interest, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to work on this. And that was a great way actually to do it, because it puts an objective benchmark and shows success, I guess, enough success to like motivate something like that. I had to do that for myself too, personally, because I was also scared of going full time on something. Yeah, and Layla, anything to add?
I think those were all really great points. I think the obviously like refugee family really resonates with me as well. It was hard to kind of almost drop out of medical school and do something else. But I think, and also at the time, like some individuals in my family were saying like, oh, how could you leave something so prestigious for something like less prestigious? And it was a lot of like questioning my decisions, I think. But at the end of the day, just really sticking to my gut feeling of like my experience of going through training, like clinical training, and just the like moral dilemmas that I was facing every day as a clinician, and like all of the things that I felt like made me like so unhappy in medical school and like working as a doctor, just really coming back to those reasons and really like sticking strong to like, I'm like doing a career for myself and for my own fulfillment. And like, it can be more or less prestigious for someone else's opinion. But I think working on something that's fulfilling is kind of the goal in life, right? So it's definitely been really hard. I don't mean to say it was just like a decision and I moved on. It's definitely something that I still come back to, but I think just really sticking to like, you are doing things for yourself and for your own enjoyment and your own fulfillment in starting a company and doing what you love. So
Layla, this is Vicky. Sylvie had a question about how you were able to balance both. And I guess the answer is it's not possible. I'm just wondering if you put a pin in medical studies or what you're doing.
So actually, I'm finishing the degree. This is my last year. Right now I'm doing like credits currently just to kind of wrap up the degree. But actually at the time that we were prototyping the technology and all of last fall, I was actually like still in school. I was doing a research year at Stanford. So I was working in a lab there at the same time, actually. So it was a lot of like duplicating myself, it was crazy. So I think it was just something that I understood to be like a short-term sprint that I just needed to kind of like get through and decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. And then when I decided I wanted to do Ruby full-time, like after medical school, then really just talking to advisors, understanding how I could quickly wrap up the degree with the least kind of headache possible, which is what I'm doing now, just kind of wrapping up credits and things like that. So I think trying to limit those sprints to things that are manageable amounts of time for you to make like decisions or achieve decision points is important, but not like letting them go on until you burn out. It's important.
Thanks so much for the question. I'm going to kind of shift over to Mithunan, if you don't mind asking your question. And Christy, thank you.
Thank you,
Hey.
Christy.
Hey, cool listening to you. So I have this question. So did you go through a lot of like market research and doing customer interviews to kind of identify the core problem? And how did you how are you sharpening your product market fit right now?
Yeah, great question. And I learned a lot of this customer interviewing through classes at Berkeley, like different design thinking classes. So definitely an IEOR too, I think. Definitely recommend those. It started off with a foundational just insight and knowledge because we grew up in the fashion industry. Our family had a fashion brand. So we had this baseline just knowledge about how the industry works. And we saw that things were moving more to sustainable materials, but we wanted to validate it and not just take it at face value. What we did was we interviewed a bunch of fashion brands. We talked to sustainability teams, also production people, so the people who develop the clothing and designs and make decisions on what materials they use. And we just wanted to validate, what are their motivations and what are their problems. So definitely something, always talk to customers, always get outside the building and test your hypotheses. That's something we definitely did and we continue to do every day. That was what we used for the initial, okay, this is clearly a problem. This is the framing of the problem. This is what our solution can look like. And then now what we're doing is continuing that, but strengthening it even more. So beyond just saying, yes, I have this problem, the next stage is that the customer will put money towards it. So that's what we're kind of doing now, is signing pilot agreements with these major brands that have fees and revenue associated with it. So that's the next validation step. And then we'll continue strengthening the validation until we just have long-term customers, basically.
That's
cool.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to just keep on bringing people in, just so you know. Hope you don't mind being peppered with questions, but gosh, you're good at it. And then I'm wondering, Layla, do you feel like Nika always talks more?
That's what she does best. She's the CEO. So no, she's so good at presenting things. God.
How wonderful. Pranit, nice to see you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Victoria. First of all, thank you so much, Layla and Nika, for sharing your stories. I found it very insightful. My question is not so super technical. It's more from a learning standpoint. So we're in college right now and we've got limited time available to us, right? I'm an aspiring biomedical entrepreneur myself. So I also I struggle with how to make the most of my time in college with, so many options and the opportunity cost of each. So how would you recommend maximizing our time here, especially from the standpoint of building meaningful skills?
Definitely. Yeah, I have a perspective, and then I'm sure Layla does too. Definitely my approach and what I learned was useful. Also just reflections on maybe stuff that I didn't do that I wish I did. It all comes down to yes, getting to try those different things. And there's so many things to be doing at Berkeley and so many options, but it's okay if you don't need to do everything, but getting a diverse experience in a few different things to understand how things work in research, how things work in a scrappy team, how things work, starting something yourself. If you can, in some way, through maybe a few different experiences, learn about those different cases, different situations and how you build in those cases and succeed, it'll go a long way. For me, that was the research internships, a few clubs, engineering clubs and whatnot, and then trying to start my own thing. And I think just that breadth and that experience is useful. And then just know that you don't have to do everything. It's okay, even when you graduate, you still have like a lifetime ahead of you. You can continue to do cool things, but definitely try to do the stuff that really inspires you. That's awesome. I think just adding on to that, focusing in on learning a variety of techniques, I think is a great strategy. So if you're an aspiring biomedical engineer or wanting to go into entrepreneurship in that area, I think learning a lot of like lab techniques that kind of you start understanding how these procedures operate. And then once you have an idea, you know how exactly to test it, or you start like building perspectives from different angles. I think that is where a lot of the great ideas for Ruby came from, like an understanding of how things work kind of in the background of all of these different lab procedures and the science behind them. And also like layered onto that, like other techniques outside of biology, like learning how to code and all of these other kind of things that can layer onto each other and improve your venture and just come from a multifaceted approach in when you find like the thing that you're most passionate about. Like it's all about the techniques that you do to go after that. Nice.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm sorry, I'm like silently asking or like can't see my video, but Arthur, I'm going to ask you to go, and Pranit, thank you very much.
Hi, Layla and Nika. Thank you for talking to us about Ruby technologies. My question is geared more towards Nika. So you mentioned that you tried starting up multiple companies in undergrad, and I was just wondering what you did differently when you founded Ruby, and more specifically, did you think that your experience in the industry helped you when you started this company?
Yeah, great question. I think I can boil it down to I treated it like a real company. I really like went for it and believed that it could be something big and something that I would focus full time on. I think the things that I worked on while still at Berkeley I treated them more like side projects, even though I thought of them as startups or ventures. I feel like I wasn't able to push as hard as I could and really like think about building a team around an idea and making it successful. It was more so like, let me just test out this idea, see if it works, build out a business model. And it was more so focused on like me developing a project versus me building a team and a company that could be something one day. I think that mindset is so important. It's something that I found to be really transformational when, even though I was starting Ruby on the side of my job, it was like, this is going to be a massive company. Like we need to think about what it's going to take to make that happen. And I think a big, just number one thing is probably you need a team to make it happen. I was always starting things on my own. I felt like I could never really find like a co-founder or someone who could like join in on things with me. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. It's hard. I totally get it. Finding a co-founder is so hard. Luckily, I had one built in. But just remember that starting something and building something lasting and all of that requires a team and like a great group of people. That was the other thing, I think, like to make it really real. Was there another question that you had, Arthur?
Yeah, I also wanted to know if your industry experience helped you with starting Ruby technologies.
Yeah, I do think that getting that exposure to like working at a great Bay Area startup and what's cool about Bay Area startups, like cool tech companies, is they attract a lot of people from different companies. So you get to learn the best like operational strategies from so many different companies. So at Lyft, which is where I was working, there's a lot of people from Google, Facebook, not saying like they're the best, but you can definitely learn a lot of stuff from these companies in terms of running teams, operations, meeting people. For us, it didn't end up like that. Ruby isn't about like computer science. So it wasn't like I met a lot of the people that I'd hire. for Ruby, but it was more so I learned so much about building products and leading teams as a product manager at Lyft, and the systems that you need to build to have a good company. I thought that was helpful. And one thing I'm learning right now is that you actually can't just apply those systems to a startup. And I've tried this, let's try this like operational system or goal setting system. And it just like failed horribly at our company. And it's because we're just different sizes, different companies, all of that. So you can learn the frameworks, but then you'll also need to think about what's unique about your company.
Thanks so much, Arthur. I'm going to ask a question for Brian because his camera's not working, Brian Whitney. And I hope you all don't mind. We try to leave a little bit of time, but how would you pitch your business? How did you pitch your business? And I'm not saying it as well as Brian actually did.
Yeah. So it usually starts with trying to get the interest of an investor, maybe through a warm connection. So typically I would go through someone I know or some way to get the attention of an investor with like a little short blurb or some words on what we do to get a first meeting. And then what we usually cover in an intro meeting, it's like a 30-minute call. I start it with being friendly. And then I think the most important thing is just like in the shortest amount of time, convey all of the key points about what you do and why it matters. And sort of like why they should care. I think a mistake that I did initially and people always do is you like go into this long thing about your background and then what the problem is and all of that. And like 1 minute in, the investor is already just like somewhere else, like checking their email or something.
Nika, would you pretend that instead of speaking to all the students here that you're actually at a conference, which you are often, maybe we can make it fun. It's like South by Southwest. I just happened to approach you and say that I'm at, with somebody small, like Andreessen Horowitz, I don't know. How would you tell me what you're doing?
Yeah, totally. I have like a little pitch in my head that I do. But I'll say, hi, I'm Nika, co-founder and CEO of Rubi. We turn CO2 into carbon negative textiles for the fashion industry. And you wouldn't expect this, but fashion is actually the third most CO2 polluting supply chain on the planet. And major brands in the industry, about $1 trillion of combined market cap, have committed to achieving net zero emissions. The problem is that the majority of these emissions come from textile production, and it's impossible today to achieve those net zero commitments while still making apparel. There's no solutions that exist for these brands. So what we do at Rubi is we produce the same high quality natural textiles already used by the industry directly from CO2 for less cost and completely carbon negative and water and land neutral. And we even plug into existing textile manufacturing as a branded ingredient. Over the last 6 months, we've developed customer partnerships and are on track for $1 million in revenue this year and 25 million in letters of intent through pilots with leading brands like H&M, Levi's, Ganni, Nike. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned all of those names, as well as some of the largest cellulose textile manufacturers in the world. We validated our product at the lab scale and are working on scaling up. And we're actually raising a fundraise currently for our next round to accelerate our pilot facility and be able to serve that unprecedented customer demand that we've been seeing over the last few months. And then I would say, how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think you did something pretty incredible. I'm sure you do this all the time, but you quickly gave background. You talked about what the problem is. That problem statement is huge. You talked about that you already have traction. The fact that you already have customers is great. And then you did something that people sometimes forget. You ask, you say you have an opportunity to invest, and do you want to invest? And at the end, you asked a question. So bravo. Thank you.
Thank you. It takes some practice.
I think I'm going to see, we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to pull, or Sukriti or Artem, would you pull some more individuals in to ask? Or is there anybody who's in line who hasn't asked their question yet? I've had a couple of individuals ask about internships and contact, and I said that we would post that a little bit later, if that's all right.
Yeah, definitely. We're always looking for interns.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and Sukriti and Artem, can you pull in some individuals, including Kate Yee has an interesting question. I'm going to see if Kate will come on. And Holly has a quick one, so maybe she'll come on too. Kate, are you already on? Fantastic. Kate, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and put your, thank you. We'll go, oh, I see we've got a twofer with Kate. I like it.
Yes, my friend Erin is also in the class, so we just watched it together.
Nice.
I had a lot of questions actually, but I think the one that Erin and I were actually discussing was, what is your current team like? So like, how big is it? And then how did you find this current team?
Yeah, and that is such a great question because that is like the make it or break it of the early stages of a startup. Right now, our team is about 10 people, including us. We actually have our own office and lab in East Bay, where everyone works. And the team is mostly on the science and engineering side. And I mean, imagine like as someone who has like decades of experience in the industry, approached by a startup founded by like us and like we're the only ones on the team, like what it takes to motivate someone to join that team. We had to really focus on the mission and like what we're trying to change and this like new technology that we're trying to bring to reality. Of course, all of the traction and the prototype and everything that we've proven so far, but really focused on captivating people in like what we're trying to achieve, I think was so important. And we were able to get really great hires, like senior people at biotech companies around the Bay Area to join on.
There's a lot of like LinkedIn stalking and
Yes.
messaging, a lot of like in-mail usage and things like that.
One thing that I learned some lessons through industry, like thinking about how you hire a team and stuff like that. One thing that I always think about is think about all the skills that you need, think about the number of people that you can hire, divide those things, and then you basically know like, okay, you need these few people who can each do these few things. That's like just like a rough framework for thinking about who you need to bring on immediately. And then yeah, LinkedIn stalking, reach out to people, use your network.
Yeah, and I think actually in the first like few messages or in your first conversation, understanding what motivates the person is really important. So in our early few hires, we learned that, you know, different scientists coming into it had a lot of quite different motivations. So some were really motivated that we were an all-female founding team. Some were really motivated by the interesting cutting edge science. So just really leaning into the things that the people are the most interested in, I think really helps also with the kind of end sell.
That's great. I want to be conscious of our time. Holly, if you don't mind asking the last question, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for coming in and talking to us. It's been really awesome seeing something that's a little bit different than what we usually see in the sort of bioengineering space. I think what you're doing is awesome in the fashion space as well. I was just really curious what the name of the lab was that you started initial prototypes in. I've heard of Counterculture Labs, which is out in Oakland, but nothing in the South Bay. So I'd love to hear about that space.
Yeah, it's actually, I guess they're like sister labs or something. They work pretty closely together. But I first knew about Counterculture too, and then discovered the South Bay one that has like a little bit more equipment, and it's called BioCurious. They have like some good research equipment there, and yeah, it was great. So that's where we did our first prototype.
And do you remember
I think that
cost for a membership or whatever?
Yeah, it's $100 a month for just like unlimited access and you get to use all of their materials and stuff. And then they also do scholarships. So it's pretty flexible pricing.
Fantastic. You all are certainly like look for all the opportunity. I love that. I love all the questions that we've had today. I am going to post, Abigail, I just wanted to thank you very much for making this evening possible in all sorts of different ways. And Nika and Layla, it has been a true pleasure. It's not an ending point. Newton is a starting point. Started when you were like listening to Jessica and Diane, and I hope it'll continue. I don't know, after I post our Newton Learning, which is the passcode, I don't know if you want to post or want to give me information and I can send it to the students on internships and possibly getting in touch.
Yeah, we would love to. Is it something we could do after the call and then you can forward it? Awesome. Okay.
I will certainly do that. I'm sharing Newton Sharing right now. If you all have any other thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat. Again, thank you, Sukriti and Artem. Thank you, especially Abigail, and to our incredible speakers. Wishing you so much success. And I guess I have one last question. If I want to make sure that I have Ruby fabric, is there a label I should be looking for when I'm purchasing?
It's something you'll be able to see in any end material. So like, let's say you're buying from Levi's or Balenciaga or something, like you'll be able to actually know that it's Ruby material. So it won't be hidden or anything like that. It's super transparent.
Written on the tag with what kind of, it'll be like Ruby fabric or something.
So just keep an eye out next year, maybe end of the year, for some cool drops.
Fantastic. I feel like with that, Layla, you should be an honorary bear also. So thank you very much. Go Bears. Wishing everybody a good night. I don't know if you all want to stay on just a few more minutes in case anybody has any last questions. I'm happy to bring individuals on if you want to raise your hand, and I guess I should be conscious of your time as well.
Yeah, thank you all so much. This was awesome to be here. Thanks for the great questions, and we're still learning about entrepreneurship and everything too. So happy to answer any questions that anyone has in the future. Thanks for the thank yous.
Yeah.
Oh, so nice.
And stay tuned for the announcement tomorrow. I'll follow up with information on you all and any possible internships.
Great. That sounds perfect.
Amazing. And we're happy to stay on a few more minutes if anyone has any other questions.
Great. If you have questions and want to come on, just raise your hand, and Sukriti and Artem and I will put you on as panelists so you can chat with us. And I'll go ahead and also stop the recording just in case people are uncomfortable with that. Maybe I'll stop the recording. I can't even tell right now. There we are.
Yeah, thank you again so much, Leila and Nika. I was so excited when I found like your startup and also like learned about your guys' journey. So this is so cool. I'm glad you guys got to speak and tell your journey here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're so honored to be here, truly.
I'm glad you found us on TikTok. And also everyone can follow us on TikTok and hype us up. It's ruby.earth on TikTok.
It's a
so
smart
hopefully
way.
I'm promoting 2 people to panelist. I hope that worked. Faiza and Gersima.
Yes, can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Perfect. First of all, thank you so much for coming in. It's been so inspirational to hear you talk and all the guidances that you've given us. One question that I had for Nika was, you worked as a product manager at Lyft, and do you think you would go back and you touched a little bit on like you wanted to do entrepreneurship, but you had that family pressure to like get that 9-to-5 job. Would you still go into product management, or would you start off as an entrepreneur right after college?
That's a great question. I honestly think that I learned so much from being a product manager, even just for I was there for like exactly 2 years. I thought I would leave after like less than 1 year. I felt like I was still learning so much and was still like working on the side on projects. So it just felt like a really great deal, honestly. I think having a product mindset is so important to entrepreneurship, and getting to test that out firsthand, leading teams, thinking about users and building products that succeed and hit metrics and all of that. I think it's a great experience. So not necessary. There's plenty of entrepreneurs who maybe don't have that experience. But I do think a lot of entrepreneurs are especially effective when they have product experience. So either path is totally great. But if you do PM and then do entrepreneurship, there's definitely a lot of good learnings.
And I think adding on, like, if you're graduating and you have this like strong conviction to start a company and you have this great idea and you really want to start a company, I don't think like
my apologies. I'd meant to stop recording earlier, so it's a little bit off the record, but there you go. You all are always on the record. Gersmer, do you want to go ahead? Oh, excuse me. It's Faiza, right?
Hi. Yes. Leila and Nika, thank you so much for your talk. I really inspired from you. And I had this question about the scientific part of this project. Actually, because sometimes I have some ideas that are not relevant to the major that I'm studying in. And like, for example, I'm studying information management and systems, but I have some ideas about health tech, but I'm not sure how feasible they are, like, in scientific perspective. I was wondering, like, what kind of resources you found on campus to, like, support you in this way, like, to mentor you if like, scientifically or technologically it's feasible to do this project or not.
I love that. That's so great that you're thinking of ideas just across the board and problem solving. I think that's amazing. Something that also like really resonates with me. I always had an idea book, had ideas across different fields, and just tried to explore them with new perspective, which I think is actually a strength, like bringing a new perspective to a field. What I found to be really helpful, like as I started to think about synthetic biology, even when I was a material science student, I took like an initial class. I spoke to grad students and people that were like approachable in that field, just to like bounce ideas off and kind of more in like a low pressure way, test out concepts. Like, is this dumb? Or, I mean, nothing's like dumb, but like just to see like what their reaction was. And then of course the professors that you feel a connection with are always a great starting place. I think there can be like, don't let like one individual or one person who maybe is like discouraging or something like discourage you. I had a bunch of experiences like that. And I'm glad that I didn't let like individuals who maybe had like more of a negative perspective or something like shut down my creativity. But definitely like use people that you trust. And I think just like talking to people, talking about the idea is the best way to test it and learn more. So it's like, you'll probably learn something about how to get started.
Yeah. And I think when we were doing a lot of those like customer interviews back when we were kind of testing the idea and really defining the problem space, it was, like I mentioned, kind of more for the interviewing thing, but looking for people on LinkedIn and then messaging like, can I have 5 minutes of your time, like 10 minutes of your time, something like that, where you can just get a short conversation with people who are really deep into the fields that you're interested in kind of disrupting. I think getting a lot of those different kinds of perspectives can be really helpful. And even if they're not immediately available like on campus or kind of directly within reach, I think going out and trying to find those people, their emails or their LinkedIns or anything like that, I think is a great strategy too.
People are amazingly responsive on LinkedIn, especially I find if I start with you, like why you are like, you came to mind because what you're doing for the fashion industry is incredible. I'm a second year student at Cal. would you take 5 minutes to speak with me?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a really awesome tool.
How, just curious, how did you end up opening Abby's email?
I think I saw like the Newton lecture or something, and I was like, I still actually get the emails from like all of from like the MSc department, from Haas. I still get all these emails, and sometimes I like look into them. So I was like, oh, like what's going on with the Newton series? And then it was like an invitation for us to come. It's like blew my mind. I was really excited. Yeah, honored, totally.
I didn't know it's like inventing a new way of using enzymes. Newton series blew my mind. It's nice to know that. Faiza, thank you for your question. I think I really should have thanked also the students who introduced both of you as well. But I will. We have a passcode, and so actually this is a little bit different, Nika, than when you were taking the series. But we ask everybody for feedback, and I'll provide that to you tomorrow in a note. And then what would be great if you all have anything that you can send to me, and so that I can share it with the students, that would be super.
Amazing. Yeah.
So it's been an incredible night. Abigail Crisp, way to go.
Yeah,
No,
thank you,
thank you
Abby,
all.
so much for finding us on TikTok.
Great moderation.
Yeah.
Great moderation, great questions. It was awesome. Really
No,
appreciate
thank you. I feel like it was super helpful for like a lot of new entrepreneurs and people who are interested in that field. And I think your perspectives were really unique, and I hope a lot of people got a lot out of it, but I'm sure they did.
There's still 59 people on, so everybody have a very, very good night. Thank you, and see everybody next Tuesday.
Yes,
Take
thank
care,
you
y'all.
all.
Bye.
Good
Take
night.
care.